Now it's time for Movie Friends with your hosts Michelle and Seth. We're talking film without pretension. We're finding cats that are unexpected. We'll watch a movie, film, or schmovie, and we want you to join our journey. So subscribe and share this podcast, or this might just be the last of the Movie Friends. We're movie friends. We want to be your movie friends.
Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. My name is Seth. Hey, today we are talking about a movie. I don't know if you've heard of this one, folks. It's called The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan from 2026. Now, folks, I know that you may have not read The Odyssey. And even if you did, maybe you read the wrong translation. I don't know. But I got to warn you, even if you know what a Trojan horse is, we will be discussing spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film yet, do yourself a favor. Don't ruin it just by listening to two dudes talking about it. Go see the movie and then come back and listen. Unless you don't care, in which case, fine, whatever. Today, it's a great day, folks. Okay? He's here, he's strung his bow, and he's ready to shoot right through the axes. It is Aaron, co-host of the Hit Factory podcast. Aaron, how are you?
Seth, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you for having me here today. I've been furiously trying to figure out some sort of Odyssey like pun or play on words or some sort of visual from either the film or the text that I could say right now. And I mean, plucking the bow is probably the very best one any of us could come up with. So I'm just going to leave it at that and not beat myself up that I've already tripped out of the stumbling blocks of the riff race here.
The riff race, yes. That is the only race I've ever won in my life, I think, maybe. But Aaron, thank you very much for coming on. I'm excited to talk about The Odyssey with you. Before we do, I know that your show is on a bit of hiatus, which is like doubly nice that you're here to do this. But can you tell us, for anyone who may not be aware of your show, could you give us a little bit of what you guys do over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I host a podcast called Hit Factory. And Hit Factory is a podcast about the films of the 1990s, their politics, and generally how they sort of inform the landscape of film as we know it today. The 90s, as a lot of us know, not just in Hollywood, but really in world cinema, was like a particularly rich and abundant period. A lot of classics came out of that era. It was a veritable hit factory, as it were. And every week we focus in on a different film. We don't get too narrow and myopic in terms of our selections. We like to do some of the big studio stuff at the time or American independent cinema, but we also venture out into everywhere that we can find: African cinema, European cinema, Taiwanese cinema, Asian cinema, of all sorts, really, like whatever it is that we want to talk about that week, we do. And so, we've done Sam Ben and Tsai Ming Lang and Edward Yang alongside stuff like Tony Scott movies. And I co-host it with my partner and loyal co-host, Carly. We bring on guests and riff a little bit. We talk about films of that era on the Patreon. We talk about some new releases here and there every so often, and gripe about how much we hate the substance or how much we were surprised by liking Ari Aster's Eddington or something like that. And yeah, as you mentioned, we've taken some time away and taken a step back from the podcast for the time being, just because Carly and I have both had life stuff that has taken priority. All good things, like we're in a period of abundance right now. It's just a lot of stuff that requires our focus, that doesn't give us as much time to watch movies and podcasts at the moment. But as I've told our loyal fans in our Discord and on our Patreon, Hit Factory will ride again at some point, and you will see probably an errant episode here and there over the course of the last part of the summer here in the fall, even if we aren't ever officially back just yet.
Very good. Very exciting. I'm a fan of the show. And what I appreciate about your show is exactly what you just mentioned in the diversity. When you're doing movie podcasts and you like movies and you spend time talking about them and listening to people, oftentimes there's a lot of overlap on the
Yes.
coverage. And, people of our age, it's like, hey, what are we going to talk about? Primarily movies from the 90s, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I appreciate your dedication to not just, I mean, the name of your show is Hit Factory, and then you're able to include a lot more than just the hits. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you have not checked out their show, go check it out. It's you're going to get a good education from a steady hand onto some topics and some directors that you perhaps don't have on your radar. So that's Hit Factory Pod. I don't know why I sound like a salesman right now, but
Well, you're doing. I mean, you're doing a great job, and thank you for that. For saying, that you appreciate the diversity of it. It's funny, I tell people this sometimes and mention it on our show that when we bring new guests on, and when I do some outreach for folks, friends and new people alike that are maybe just people within sort of our orbit in the film space or the podcasting space, I have instituted what I call the David protocol, which means that when people send me a short list of films that they would like to talk about, they are forbidden from
yeah,
requesting any film directed by David's Fincher, Lynch, or Cronenberg, for this
yes,
very
yeah,
reason, because it inevitably includes one or all three. And we want
right.
people to try to dig a little bit deeper when it comes to picking things that they know and love.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of things that we know and love, or maybe, I don't know, the opposite of those things, before we get into the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, I think I'll call it, what is your history experience with the films of Christopher Nolan?
Oh boy, my history and experience with Christopher Nolan. I mean, the thing about Christopher Nolan is that, like, for the entirety of my cinephilic second life as a teenager, and into my 20s and 30s, like, he has been omnipresent. He's always been there.
Mm, mm,
Memento was a movie that I remember reading about in like a screenwriting book that I bought when I was 14, 15 years old, and decided that I wanted to write
mm,
and make movies, and just talking about sort of the sort of structural daring of it as a screenwriting piece, and how it follows a 3-act structure, yes, and that it underlying it is much more commonplace and simple than the execution, but that the execution is the thing about Memento and
sure,
why it's so
sure.
special. And so, yeah, I mean, from the earliest periods of like me getting really into movies as a teenager and beyond, I liked Christopher Nolan. I went through a period of time where I was, going out and seeing every one of the Christopher Nolan movies. I mean, I saw all the Batman movies in theaters. I saw The Prestige in theaters. I saw Inception. I think I basically hit every single one from Batman Begins all the way through Dunkirk, theatrically.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
And there's this joke that I've been seeing on the internet about kind of the relationship that people our age, I guess, have with Nolan, and sort of the arc we've taken, where it's like, you're a budding cinephile and you're like, I love Nolan. Nolan's the shit. Nolan's a
Mm,
genius. And then you grow up a little bit and you maybe like phase out of your like superhero phase or your blockbuster period and start getting a little bit more voracious appetite for things off the beaten path, a little bit more avant-garde. And then you're like, fuck Christopher Nolan. I hate Christopher Nolan. Can I curse, by the way? I know I just did that, but without
yes,
asking,
yes.
but okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so you go through this period where you're kind of like, nah, I'm over it. And yet, like, in his late period here, I would say really from like Interstellar on, as his movies have gotten more divisive, and I would say especially the more divisive ones like Interstellar upon release, and Tenet specifically too, I have found myself gravitating back towards his movies in ways that have surprised me a lot. And so now,
Mm,
as like a 36-year-old, I say, like, I will always give him the benefit of the doubt because whatever comes out is going to be at least interesting to me, especially at the level of blockbuster that he's making. Like no one else is doing movies that are quite as intricate and interesting on a, I mean, conceptual level maybe, but I think more just like that Nolan is one of those interesting kind of auteurs who finds a way to take all of his predilections and all his fascinations and build them into the text in ways that sometimes are surprising to you, even though it's always the same stuff. Like it's always going to be, like he's going to. What's the thing that goofy podcast? He's going to do time shit, like, and he does. But
Yeah.
Um,
Time, but also like, hey, here's a great man who's burdened with this thing, and look at the pain that it causes his family. Isn't that horrible? It's like, I don't know, not really. I mean,
yeah. And so, I would say that I'm a very sort of casual and very sort of tentative, cautious fan of Nolan's work. I take each movie on its own, and I'm never going to be someone who's like, this guy's a genius and his filmography is perfect. But there are plenty in there that I'm like, hey, these are pretty damn good, all the way to like, when I am feeling especially hyperbolic and I'm like, Tenet is the best blockbuster of the 2020s, like bar none.
Yeah.
And so, I always fall somewhere in there. It's, if you ask Carly, my co-host, she'll tell you, she's like, oh, you're a Nolan stan. Like you love Nolan. And then I was talking about the Odyssey with a friend of mine, a fellow podcaster, Jake Serwin from Podcasty for Me. Go listen if you haven't before. And we were talking about the Odyssey, and I shared with him, spoiler alert up front here, that I didn't love it that much. And he said, of course you didn't. Like, of course you didn't. So I actually don't really know how I come off to other people in terms of my Nolan fandom. So,
Yeah. I get the not to turn this into podcaster therapy, group therapy, but I'm on the receiving end of the of course you didn't like it. And I'm like, wait, but I'm a nice guy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But yeah, people will have an idea of what you are going to think about the movie before you even see it. And you said something that should be the most obvious thing, and honestly it is probably my least favorite part about online discourse, is all of the conjecture and the talk and the this and the hating and the hype before we have even seen the film. And then once the film comes out, it's on to the next thing. It's on to the next thing. And we're actually in love not with the film itself, the content of the film. We are in love with the train and the ride and the circle of, well, before the movie comes out, I can say anything about it. And then once the movie comes out, you don't have anything to say because all you're good at is conjecture and what ifs and this and so you said you take every film as it comes out, which is what we should all do. We should be able to enter that, that space. Famous couples therapist, Esther Perel, she has a saying that sex is not a thing that you do, but it's a place that you go. Mm-hmm. And I think that can apply to a lot of things in our life. And for film, whether that's in our living room or in the cinema, God bless the theater, right? We are entering into a mindset where we're sitting ourselves at someone else's control to show us something, and we should be entering it with as little baggage as possible. I don't care if it's a director that I don't like. This is a new film. I should be giving them as much goodwill as I can muster for this person. And if it's a director that I do like, I have to take and judge everything as it is. And that should be the most obvious statement of all time. But unfortunately, like you said, Nolan, he's a bit of a, an omnipresent force in the film world. I had a similar trajectory to you. My first Nolan film was Following, which I still, pound for pound, I think that Following and Memento are maybe some of his best movies because it's pure idea without all the trappings. And for me, I've seen what all of the technology and the money and the budget and the power, how it doesn't necessarily make a better story. It just has a lot of extra stuff. And for me, when I go to see a film, story is the number one thing that I'm looking for.
Sure.
So I'm right there with you. I think that he makes some really great films. You know, I saw Tenet in theaters because I was an idiot and risked my life to go see that. And I was like, wow, I hated that movie so much. And like,
hell yeah.
To me, that was I was like, I'm going to go see this movie in theaters. Yes, it's dangerous at this time. I don't care. I'm going to go see this movie. So if anyone should have been like, you know, blind to, you know, not, or if anyone would have entered that theater like, I'm ready to love this movie, it would have been me. And I just was like, I hate this movie so
okay. Yeah.
But I'm fully willing to be wrong. So going into, you know, I liked Oppenheimer. I didn't think it was the greatest thing that I'd ever seen. I have a saying close to the joke that you made, where when you're young, you think Tarantino is the greatest director of all time. And then you grow up a little bit and you think that Kubrick is the greatest director of all time. And then you grow up a little bit more and you realize that Agnes Varda is the greatest director of all time.
Yep. That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
But I do think you kind of loop back around to certain things. And I think that it's absurd to sit here and say like, Nolan is not a good director. Clearly he is. People seem to like working for him. You know, he takes it very seriously. He produces things that, you know, like you said, they're on this blockbuster level, but there is something to them. This is not just lights and noise and beautiful looking people. He is trying. I just, this time around was like, Nolan, baby, how do you look at Bruce Wayne, Robert Oppenheimer, and Odysseus and say, you know who these guys remind me of? Me. You know what all these guys have in common? They're just burdened with this great vision. And look at how it affects the people around them. Oh, it's such a shame. But you know, I just have to keep making my big movies. You know, it pains me so much what a toll this takes on my family, but I'm just burdened with greatness. And that is, I think, you look at Bergman. Yes, there's a thread there. You know, you look at great directors who have something to say, and we don't always fault them for having a theme. But this time around, I was like, you got to do something different next time, man. Like, I've given you so many of this. Like, please, God, do something different. And I think that was my biggest problem with the movie, which I should say I did like, but I'm with you. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I would actively, I think, say that I did not like it, and have multiple times to people. You know, not here, and it's a mixed bag. I'm with you that there are many things in the movie that I was like, oh, that's actually like I like that. I think that there's some stuff in it, and we can talk about kind of discrete moments in it. But like overall, for me, I don't know. There's just something that keeps me at a distance from this in a story that I love, by the way, in a story I grew up with in many different versions and, you know, faithful, not faithful iterations and retellings of the text and stuff that's brought in the Iliad and stuff like in this case that brings in like the Aeneid and stuff like that as well. And you know, like it's a really fascinating, vivid and beautiful, like it's one of the oldest and like most famous stories in all of like Western culture, you know, like,
right.
And there's some stuff in it that works for me, but and on paper, the idea still kind of worked for me. I will admit that even though at a certain point, like you, Seth, I was like, he's just kind of doing Oppenheimer again. I was like, it's not interesting in the context of ancient Greece and what he's doing here and the ways that he's finding into that. But the execution of it for me left much to be desired. I found that just sort of like formally, this is maybe one of his least interesting for me. It often kind of looks like, sorry, it kind of looks bad sometimes. I think that the IMAX stuff like genuinely sort of limits him this time around, and that it's just too mechanistic in approach to a story that is as sprawling and unwieldy as the Odyssey for me. Like there's just not a lot of looseness in it. I don't feel him having fun. I feel him like really like tightening the coils a little bit to make it all work in his sort of vision.
Right. Yeah. Looseness, I would call that passion. I would say, look, man, rub some dirt in this, you know? Are you familiar with Hard to Be a God?
Yes, I love Hard to Be a God. Yeah, I haven't seen it in many years, but I loved that movie when it came out.
I hate that movie, but
wow, look at us go.
But I know. But there is something to that movie that you feel and smell and taste.
Yes.
Your senses are engaged. Your stomach is engaged. You have to look away. You're like, there's something about it that feels just nasty and real. And in thinking of the Odyssey and how he chose to tell it, there's like glimmers of that, you know, when they're all stuck in the horse and they're like choking on each other's waist, or, you know, when Cersei is like reaching down into someone's throat and like just ripping them apart and I was like, okay, yes, here we go. Yeah. Everything else just felt very clean and very sterile, and it just didn't do like this. The sterile nature of it, I was like, I want a little more expression or sweat or just. And I'm not like a gore hound, you know. There's been a few different angles on the sacking of Troy, and you know, the level of violence that's depicted there. And you know, some people are saying like, well, we should have seen, you know, more sexual violence. Like he should have shown that. You know, he pulled back from actually going that far, and it was just inferred. And like, is that irresponsible, or would going the other direction be irresponsible? So I'm not like, oh, we should have seen horrible things, but it's like, I don't know. It just feels like he can't get out of his own way to tell something. I don't know.
Yeah. Or rather, a lot of times for me, it's that he tells us so that there's deniability later when we try to criticize a thing that is either lacking about the film or that could have been different. Like all the things that you're talking about. I mean, the Cersei scene, the horse stuff is exactly the 2 points in the movie that I was thinking of when you were talking about like rubbing dirt in it, where I was like, yeah, when they're like drowning in the water because they're piled in there, and John Bernthal's narrating and saying like, we're, you know, like choking on each other's piss and shit for, you know, days on end. Like that is a visceral experience to me. Same as the Cersei stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think like there are moments where he sort of like has somebody relay a message to us, usually verbally, you know, like they say a line or they tell us in voiceover. Yeah, we don't really see anything that's ever like that heightened, you know, even in like the pillaging of like the villages in the film, like the first one where I mean, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, I guess, but we're talking about, you know, the people from the sea, and we see that the first glimmers of, oh, maybe Odysseus and his men are like what these people are afraid of. They're coming from the sea and they're ransacking Greek villages and their own people. We don't see anything except for like a couple of people sort of like weeping on a beachhead and things on fire. And then Himesh Patel is like, we're Greeks, we're good guys. And we're supposed to understand the irony of it, but nothing actually happens in that scene that shows us or relays to us in a visual medium exactly like what's so vicious and evil about what it is that they're doing here, you know?
Right. Well, because I mean, and I'm going to say something and it's going to sound really, really pretentious and like, inaccessible movie guy. And I don't mean it to, but you can't have the driving off into the sunset moment if you do that, if you commit to that, because wide audiences and narrow audiences struggle with this as well.
Yeah.
But there are things that are unforgivable sins for your character that once you cross that, now you're not making a blockbuster movie. You're making a challenging piece of art that makes people question how they feel about things. And he wants to. I mean, look, I didn't scream in the theater because I'm a polite moviegoer, but when Odysseus is going off into the sunset with Anne Hathaway into an exile of his own making, I was like, Nolan, you are literally doing the ending of Dark Knight Rises, including Anne Hathaway being there.
100%. Yeah.
And so it's like, he wants that. He wants, because, he's similar to Spielberg in that way, where it's like, he wants it to be a capital M movie. He still wants to give audiences all those feelings. And it's like, he can't give them that gut punch of reality of like, these people did horrible, horrifying things, and he's the hero. How do you feel about that?
Right. Yeah.
And so he has to be tortured by those things the whole movie, because now he's done his penance. Oh, we see the journey wasn't about, glory or victory. No, it was actually penance the whole time. Don't you feel bad? Look, he deserves this. Oh, God.
Yeah. And I mean, as I'm thinking about it more, the thing is, it works in Oppenheimer, a film that, like you, Seth, I think is quite good at what it does, but not, end all be all sort of cinema. It was very good, and I'll leave it at that. I guess it's not my favorite of his, and will probably never be. But it works in Oppenheimer what he's doing here, because the alienating and dissociative power of something like an atom bomb is built into the weapon, and like the development of that like the actual reason that it's so visceral and so violent and catastrophic and terrifying to us is because it's literally like, we push a button and we send an entire civilization into hell. Not so with the tactility of something like ancient Greek warfare, right? Like, you can't just say like that's built into the text. And so with this, we actually have to show them kind of ransacking Troy, and a lot of it is built around this concept of Xenia, right? Like Zeus's law and a fair fight and not being duplicitous and very cloak and dagger. We can talk more about that. But at the end of it, like, you still kind of have to show like, hey, yes, there was a deceit here, but like the thing that they did in the movie just kind of plays out and looks like PG-13 movie violence. I mean, I guess it is technically an R-rated movie and there's some blood and stuff, but there's nothing in it to me that felt like the viscera of, like a war film or something that would be shocking or terrifying. And so there's an antiseptic quality to it that works against some of, I feel like, what Nolan's doing. And like you, like, I'm not saying like it needs to be super gory and like there needs to be entrails and, like sexual violence or like the actual realities on the ground of what this would look like. But give me something that like shocks me maybe in this moment and makes me feel like, ooh, that's rough,
Yeah, there was a little disconnect in imagine disconnect in a Nolan narrative. I thought really hammering home like why Agamemnon is doing this and how just nothing it is. Like how it is just like hubris and greed and this we're not here on this beach for 10 years because of like a great reason or self-defense.
Trade routes, they say, much like the Trade Federation in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So
or for those of us in modern American history, 9/11. We at least had the lie of self-defense and this, that, and the other, when really it ended up being about a lot of things that had nothing to do with that. So I'll say, like, I did like that angle. Like, I was like, okay, that is a neat idea, But like you said, it's like more. Like go into it. Really, you know, put on the music from the end of Saw and really bring it all together. You know what I mean? Like pull the strings and show me what everything connected and how it all means nothing and this, that. Yeah. And I mean, look, you know, I could take the other stance and say, no, Nolan trusts his audiences. He trusts them to pay attention and to put all those
Sure.
things together. For me, I did pay attention and I did get it. But I wanted more. And if you are going to put out a film with an anti-war message, with a message about like, hey, look how insane it is to go in and destroy an entire city, you know, in light of what is happening, the genocide that we're seeing, you know, in
Yes.
Palestine for, I don't know how many years now we're going on, right? If you're going to do that, I do think that you have to consider really sending that message home and not being namby-pamby about it, because then it's like, well, I don't know, man. It just left me a little hollow, I should say.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree.
Okay, now that we've said all the bad stuff about the movie,
Well, not all.
let's talk
of the
about
bad
John
stuff,
Leguizamo. Hey, are you a fan of dogs?
I am. I'm a dog. Well, I'm a cat person, I guess, first and foremost, Seth. But I liked
Okay.
this movie dog quite a bit.
Yeah, good movie dog. Good movie dog. I did gasp when we were throwing puppies off the cliff. I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I saw somewhere on the internet, because I'm perilously addicted to Twitter, but somebody mentioned that like they saw someone in their audience like leave and like walk out of the theater after John Leguizamo tosses a puppy off of a cliff. And you know, to each their own, I guess. And maybe if they weren't expecting it and they have, you know, a lot of sort of feelings around that kind of thing. But yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, so now suddenly we're dealing with an ancient Grecian morality here, where this is just fine, but elsewhere we're updating everything more or less. Okay, I'll go with it.
Right. So on that topic, you know, leading up to the film coming out, there's all of this talk about, oh, we have people who are not Greek playing these roles and he's updating things to be more modern. So I'm going to ask you two questions, and I don't expect you to remember both of them, because both of them will probably be a long answer. One, how did you feel about that part of his version of the Odyssey? And the follow-up to that is, what is, if any, a filmmaker or an artist's responsibility to the source material when they're adapting something, in your mind?
Okay. And you're talking specifically about some of the controversy around like the casting choices in this, or the updating, or both?
But also like updating to like modern language, you know, things like that. Just being like, hey, we're doing our own thing. And that includes casting people of color. That includes, you know, saying, let's go as we're running with our soldiers.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So I'll start out first and foremost here and just say, like, obviously the controversy around casting people of color in the film, like Lupita Nyong'o, or casting a trans actor like Elliot Page, is just like a right-wing campaign to stoke hatred and to like create a culture war thing. You know, it's nonsense. It's bullshit. It's regressive. It's reactionary, and it's stupid in my mind, first and foremost. Like, of course, like we, you know, have lots of very great and capable actors of all sorts, and they should all play in this movie, specifically because like there's no, like, yes, it comes from ancient Greece, like yes, it comes from like a Homeric sort of tradition here, but like Homer was writing the Odyssey, or, you know, if there ever was a Homer is honestly probably like many different people, you know, but like the production of this thing, of this text that we have come to know as the Odyssey, was happening centuries and centuries removed from when the Trojan War happened, right? And so like its aftermath was far in the rear view of where we were when this had become sort of a thing that was being shared around in Greek culture. And there are anachronisms within the text itself too, and I'm no scholar of this kind of thing, but like the Odyssey, from what I understand, pulls in all sorts of imagery and concepts and different places and things that come from the entire sort of tradition and history of Greek culture. So there's no like ancient Greece like de facto within the text that we have to pay homage to and make specific and historically accurate. And I actually think like for Nolan's purposes, what he's doing and how he's updating the text to a very 21st century and like modern kind of philosophical endeavor and thematic endeavor, like it makes sense that we would cast any and all actors and create sort of a I mean, I hate the term of like a melting pot, but like that we would cast actors of many different backgrounds, racially, in terms of their gender, in terms of their sexuality, all these things. Like these things don't matter at the end of the day to the text, because it is ultimately just like it's myth, it's tradition, and if we're updating it, give it to anybody. Like let anybody play these parts, and there's not. To me, like what's interesting, I guess, is you're updating, you're modernizing, and it is sort of one of those examples of sort of Hollywood's kind of colorblind casting. Like there isn't much in terms of, I would say, like a knowing maybe sort of like cultural component or like political component to the casting of certain characters. I think that there's obviously like a message to reactionaries inherent in saying like, we're going to make the mythological, like most beautiful woman that's ever lived a Black woman in our film, or like we're going to make a key and central figure in this story and sort of the moral backbone of the film be a trans actor. I think that that's meaningful. And I think that there's certainly like, something of a progressive message sort of built into that fundamentally, but it's not something that is there to like make a specific statement about trans identity in the 21st century, or much about like what it means to be a Black person in modern America or Europe, or growing up in sort of like the racial hierarchies that still exist and are maintained within our society. There's not much of that, right? But it makes the right wingers mad, and so like I'm up for it on that front too. Like, yeah, of course. It's also like, I mean, this is very basal and silly of me, but it's one of those things where like you have all these people online, these reactionary idiots like getting mad about the presence of someone like Lupita Nyong'o playing Helen of Troy. And I'm like, how many fucking mental pretzels do you have to twist your brain into to look at Lupita Nyong'o and not think like, wow, that is a stunning woman. Like, yes, someone would absolutely fight a war over that person.
Right. Again, I tried to enter with few thoughts in my head, but I did find it a good fit. When we're talking about anything in ancient text, right? You have two options with an audience. The audience must bend themselves to understand the text, or the text must be bent either by the person sharing it or by changing the text itself to the people so that they will understand that. And so, yes, absolutely. Right now there's so much discussion that I don't understand in the slightest because I'm not a translator of any of these texts. But there's a lot of discussion of like, well, who gets to write the text and all these different interpretations. And it's the same thing with, like the Bible, right? You have all these different translations, and, how were the books chosen to begin with all this time ago, and blah, 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 blah. And for me, Nolan is clearly, nobody I think can stand here and say that he's not trying to make a blockbuster film. In doing so, he decides to bend the text to people so that they will understand it, so that people can go and understand the story. I don't care if anyone does that with anything, because I think having anything that's like sacred and untouchable,
Yeah.
come on, please, please, please,
Yeah,
please, please,
of
please.
course.
There are versions of this that still exist. Is this the one that will be introduced to people that they'll form an opinion on? Of course. But you know what? That's not Nolan's problem. They can go buy a book. No one is stopping anyone from going. And hopefully, with all of these things, we hope that people will then be encouraged to go to the source material. And hopefully there are a lot of people who read the Odyssey prior to seeing the film. And so I don't know. I'm a fan of subverting things, quite frankly. Like I get a kick out of taking something that's sacred to people and being like, yeah, what if we did this other thing with it? So I thought it all fit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I totally agree.
Okay, so for you, do you think that there's ever is there any level of adherence that an adapter should out of respect agree to? Like when does adaptation become like irresponsible, and does it ever?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's something. I mean, I guess it's sort of like like the legal definition of pornography, I guess, where it's like I know it when I see it. When it like it
Right, I
feels
know
like something adaptive is maybe like transgressing in a way that I feel is not sound with the text or something. But the truth of it is, it's like, when it bugs me is more when it's done for purely capitalistic reasons, where it's like you have added the name of a thing to this property in order for us to have like the sort of brand or name recognition of a thing. But what you've done in the adaptation process has actually changed the story so markedly that it doesn't really bear any resemblance, and you just named it this so that people would buy tickets to see it. A good example of this, and granted, none of us have seen this yet, but there is that new Mike Flanagan series that he's doing for Amazon Prime based on Carrie, on the Stephen King property and the excellent Brian De Palma film. It's one of my favorites of his. And Carrie
it's my favorite De Palma.
Yeah, it's
top 3 favorite horror of all time.
It's a masterpiece. It's fantastic. Sissy Spacek is just brilliant in it.
The best.
But I guess, like this new show, like Carrie's like a character in it, and then like he's building the town out, and everyone has special powers now, and like different people are going to be doing different things, and it feels like it's kind of like a Stranger Things sort of situation that they're going to build out in it, and branding it as Carrie. Now, okay, like you're not like you're not allowed to do that, but at the end of the day, like you watch this series, and I'm like, there doesn't seem to be a lot here that feels like it shares the DNA of what I know to be like Stephen King's Carrie or Brian De Palma's Carrie, or like the property and the story of Carrie beyond some of these characters bearing the same names and some character traits, and then you running off to the races with everything else. In which case, I'm like, okay, like this to me it feels a bit more cynical than some other practices when it comes to adaptation or to sort of like making something your own. But I also haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's actually like really good, and maybe it does have some sort of like really good thematic coherence to the text. I'm a Flanagan skeptic. I really like Midnight Mass. The rest of his stuff I can kind of take or leave. But yeah, when it comes to like, I don't think anything is particularly sacred. I think that like adaptation, especially in a cinematic medium, is like one of the great possibilities of like engaging with an art form and turning it into something else. Like I think there are many brilliant ways that people over the years have taken a work of literature or of music or whatever and adapted it for the cinematic medium and made changes to it that are considerate of the form that it's going to take as much as they are of the content and the storytelling within it.
Right.
And I think that that's brilliant. I think that is like really cool when that happens. I feel that way. You mentioned this off mic earlier, but I recently read Moby Dick for the first time in my life and got a little obsessed with Moby Dick. Now, it is my contention that a really great cinematic, like audio visual version of Moby Dick as an adaptation would have to be probably perilously avant-garde in a lot of ways. That would be extremely alien. Like it is not a story that is just the story of Ishmael and Queequeg and Ahab and Stubbs and all of them pursuing the whale. That's like half the book. And the rest of it is pulling out a little bit and widening the aperture and talking about this as like a capitalist construct and like one of the biggest industries of the era. And you would need to do something that began well before the story in terms of the history of whaling. And you would need to take it into the 21st century now and figure out a way to like talk about how the oil industry for a period of time was this, right? It was the thing that kind of replaced whaling as like a source of like crude that we use to power things. It would maybe even need to go all the way to the 21st century and have something about like the current situation, the extractive properties of data centers and AI. And to me, that's the only sufficient way to tell that story. So like, you know, I'm not a person who's like, you have to like stick to the letter of the book and or to the story and say like, this is how you tell it. I think that people do interesting stuff with it all the time. And I don't find anything particularly sacrosanct in that regard. That's a long-winded answer, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a real lack of being okay with not everything being everything. You know,
Yes.
everything is like cross. Like, you know, you have to be able to have a toy to sell at Taco Bell, as well as a spinoff series and a comic series and a novel adaptation. And it's like, you know, some things are just okay as a book, you know, and the book not being readily adaptable into a movie is in no way, or should not be in any way, like a slight against the book, but everything has to be like 10 different things. Two things really quick, folks. If you have never seen The Rage, Carrie 2, gotta tell you, not the best movie ever, but I don't know, maybe give it a shot, you know?
Worthwhile.
And then number two, the whole time you were talking, there's a film, folks, that does exactly what Aaron just said, but in a way that is incredible. And it was very overlooked and misunderstood at the time. That's right, folks. Josie and the Pussycats, still the greatest film of all time.
Good movie.
About the effects of capitalism on our young people and on our art, and how everything gets sucked into a machine and distorted way past the point of recognition. And it's really just a name. It really is just a hook that's used to go into your brain and then feed you anything that they want once they have you. If you have not seen Josie and the Pussycats, and I did not expect to be talking about this movie while talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, you must see this movie. Oh my God, it is so good.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. All right. I want to ask you a few specifics before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Starting primarily with Matt Damon as Odysseus. How do you feel about him and this flavor of arc, I'll call it, for Odysseus in this version?
I think Matt Damon does the best possible job someone could do with this version of Odysseus. I think that he does a pretty injured, tortured kind of guy who's trying to repent and trying to find some sort of penance for his past deeds. He looks kind of, you know, they scraggle him up quite a bit, and he looks good with the kind of beard and the gray, and he has talked in interviews about losing a substantial amount of weight for this movie, and you can see it like almost to the point where like there are some sequences where he's so lean in the way he's kind of contorting his body when he returns to Ithaca and he's playing kind of like the beggar. He looks kind of emaciated and he looks like very raw and sort of, you know, interesting. I like him quite a bit in this. My heart will always be with the wonderful Armand Assant, the actor who played Odysseus in the 1997 Andrei Konchalovsky miniseries. But it's a different Odysseus. You know, he's able to do all the sort of different versions of him in that with aplomb and grace, and just looks terrific doing it. But Damon understands the assignment, I think, and does very well with it.
Yeah, I'm a fan. You know, I'm a fan of Matt Damon. I wouldn't say that I've seen more than the average bear of his movies, but I've never really had a problem with him.
Yeah.
Here, it, you know, and this will never happen because people are cowards, but I kind of was like, you know what? maybe if the movie wasn't a who's who of people that we all know, I'd be able to enter it a little bit more, because at points I was like, I really feel like I'm watching Matt Damon and not a character.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my problem. But, I said earlier, I don't love this movie. I also think it is a little foolish. I mean, anyone can do anything that they want, but to see a film on this scale, I don't think that we need to praise money that goes into it, but I do think the crew and the cast are very well deserve a round of applause for the effort that they put into it.
Yeah.
Nolan coming out again as generative AI, and still having a commitment to practical effects. I think that all of those things are something that we don't need to pretend that this is the greatest movie of all time in order to say these are important things that they did as well. And if anyone has ever been on a film set of just filming a simple, dialogue scene at a table, that's hard.
Yep.
So for everything that they did in this movie, it's like, okay, to me, this is a great movie with like a not a capital G, but great in the literal sense of greatness. And it's not something that I loved. It's not something that I'm going to necessarily return to, but I'm not stupid. Well, actually, I am kind of stupid, but I'm
We all
not. I'm not blinded by my own ego to say if I didn't like it, there's nothing good. I think there's a lot of good things here. Taking a big chance on Tom Holland here. I thought he was.
I'm so interested to hear where this is going.
I thought that he was a serviceable actor in this role. Is Nolan playing on all of our understanding of him as like the eternal child man, in this particular role? How did you feel about Mr. Holland?
Yeah, I didn't mind Holland. I was actually like really surprised to see so many people when I got out of the theater and like started reading reviews be like, "Oh, he's abysmal. He's so terrible."
Yeah.
I thought he was fine. I thought that he did a pretty decent job. He didn't, take me out of the movie ever. He didn't, run away with it or anything. And he has the benefit of being in scenes with much better actors like Hathaway and Damon and Rob Pattinson.
Yes.
But he didn't do much for me that offended me at all. And while we're giving shouts out to movies here, I will always have a little bit of grace for Tom Holland, despite his track record of pretty terrible movies in a lot of these big tentpole like Marvel things, because he's in one of my favorite films of the 2010s, which is James Gray's The Lost City of Zed, as the son of Charlie Hunnam.
Sure.
I think James Gray gets a phenomenal performance out of everyone in that movie. Rob Pattinson's also in that one, so he and Holland have worked together a few times. He's good, and so I know what he's capable of. And in this, like, he reminded me of that Holland quite a bit. I thought that he did a nice job.
Yes, I also feel that he's not in the greatest films, but I don't understand why that allows people to feel the right to be like, this guy is the worst person on the planet. It's like, I don't know, man. Go back to the 70s and there were some people who weren't good actors. I don't wish them ill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like who really sucked? Oh my God, that guy. I hope he has a really bad day. Okay, you mentioned her, Anne Hathaway. I love Anne Hathaway. I think that Anne Hathaway is a fantastic. Mother Mary is still my favorite film of this year. I thought that was. Oh my God, I was absolutely blown away. Incredible two-hander. Really, I mean, man, you got to love, a flair for the dramatic and theatrical, I think, to really enter that movie, because the premise is like absurd, but it has nothing to do with the premise. This is a movie about performances and dialogue and monologues and, chemistry, and it has all of those things. So Hathaway, I grew up with Anne Hathaway. I grew up with Princess Diaries, and watching her go from that to like Ella Enchanted. Ella Enchanted was the only double date that I went on in my high school years. And so I don't know that I have like nostalgia for her, because I think that she has proven over and over and over and over again just how good. I mean, you know, uh, I loved Devil Wears Prada too, and I went into that like, my God, this is going to be terrible. Like, genuinely, I know I've been talking about like entering movies as clear-headed as possible. I was like, there's no way this can be good, and I was really proven wrong. So Hathaway, I think, is like, just, she can do a lot. She can do a lot, and I liked her here. I thought that she was good. I didn't like that her really big monologue ends with her just like, screaming for her husband. I was like, you just did such good work showing why that's all nonsense. But okay. How did you feel about her here?
Yeah, I mean, there's some contradictions, I think, in the text of like what they want that character to be, and I think that the only reason it really comes through is because of Hathaway and her performance. Like, I'll be honest with you, she's far and away my favorite performance in the film, just because every time she's on screen, the movie got considerably better for me and was interesting, and I thought that the choices she was making, they were interesting too. I liked her scenes with Pattinson. I liked her scenes with Holland. Far and away, my favorite scene in the entire film is the extremely Catholic, like confessional scene at the end, where Odysseus in his beggar garbs sits on one side of sort of like the, kind of like the screen, and she's on the other side, kind of hearing his testimony as he's speaking in the third person about her husband and all of that. And the emotionality finally worked for me in the film during that scene in a couple of ways. Not all of them, but like that was my favorite moment in the entire film. And a lot of it has to do with just sort of like the register that Hathaway is on, her face, her eyes. Yeah, I mean, I think that Anne Hathaway has just like been discounted for too long. I just revisited Rachel Getting Married this past week.
Sure.
And I don't, and a great Jonathan Demme picture. And I watched that and I'm like, oh yeah, like why is anybody ever allowed to say even like a sort of bad word about Anne Hathaway? Like, she's brilliant, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just came to her defense the other day when someone was online talking about like, oh, well, look at her filmography. And I'm like, yeah, I am.
Who cares?
What exactly are you picking here to be like, she's bad? Yeah, but what, hey, look, I'm just a Hathaway stan. What can I say?
Right. Yeah.
I'm biased, I suppose. This is obviously, a story in the great tradition of Forrest Gump, where, one man is just on a journey meeting interesting characters, and some of the stuff worked for me, some of the stuff didn't. The giant island, I was like, practically how they did that with
really cool.
The 7 foot tall people, and then the other people were 5 foot tall. I was like, yeah, all that's cool. That wasn't really my favorite. I appreciated the Cyclops. Cersei, I was like, I want to live on this island longer. I want to be here a lot longer. Samantha Morton, one of the best character actors working today. She's incredible. If no one has checked out Jesus' Son, Billy Crudup, Samantha Morton knocks it out of the park. It just incredible, fantastic. I love her. So seeing her here, I was like, 1, Samantha Morton, I hope you get paid a lot of money, and 2, I am really into everything that you are doing to these men. Did you have like, I don't even want to ask you if you had a least favorite, but did you have a favorite or, random scattered thoughts on these random scattered meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think Samantha Morton's really great, and the stuff with Calypso is some of the most visceral and interesting stuff. The practical effects that they used to do that kind of transformation and the sculpting of the men into pigs,
Mhm.
I thought was really cool. I was sort of hit or miss on the Polyphemus scene. We don't even call him Polyphemus. He's just a cyclops in this, I guess. I don't even know if we really
Mhm.
give him the
Right.
benefit and the right of personhood in this until we hear that he can talk.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
and I straight up hated the Laestrygonian stuff as you did. I thought again, like, you know, in camera, like the way that they like did that effect with the big people and the little people, you know, people come in all shapes and sizes. It's pretty cool. And it looks
Yes.
neat, but the actual compositions, the action, like the editing of it, it's not very good. Apologies to my dear Charlize, who I think is totally capable and wonderful, but every single moment with Calypso had me very, very ready to just like sort of like zone out and doze. Like it was really, that stuff was like actively kind of bad in the movie for me. I just did not like it.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, also, you know, she's also great. She's also someone who's accused oftentimes of having quite a lot of stinkers under her belt.
Yep.
And I didn't get this. It felt like a different movie. It felt like I don't know. Yes, total. Just I was like, all right, man, let's go. What are we doing here?
Right.
John Leguizamo, I mentioned him earlier. I appreciate him.
Really great. I love whenever John Leguizamo shows up. I think he's a very underrated, terrific actor.
Yeah. You mentioned him earlier. Himesh Patel as Eurylycus, and I was like, dude, this dude's kind of. I like this guy. I like everything that he's saying. I wish he was a little more. I was like, this guy should be in charge, quite frankly.
Yeah. You know, we were talking about a maybe even slightly more woke and progressive version of the Odyssey. I don't mind in my wish casting in my mind here a version of this movie and this story where Himesh Patel plays Odysseus. I think that he would do a good job with it. I like Himesh Patel a lot. His big credits. He was in the Danny Boyle film Yesterday, where like everyone forgets about
Correct.
the Beatles, and
Yeah.
it's not a very good movie, but it's better than it could be because he's good in it. And then shout out to Station 11, the HBO series
Sure.
with him. He's one of the finest performances on it. And I think that that's one of the best sort of like multi-episode things I've seen in the last like 5-6 years. I thought that one was
Wow.
really terrific.
Wow. Yeah, that movie is it's there's a funny phenomenon around Yesterday where it's a movie where everyone wakes up and forgets that the Beatles existed.
Right.
And then 5 years later everyone woke up and forgot that the movie where the Beatles don't exist anymore existed. Like that movie only exists in the realm of a joke, but
Yes.
yeah. Aaron, is there anything that we did not talk about that you want to mention?
You know, I mean, I don't know that it's totally appropriate within the context of this show and what we've talked about here, but I want to reiterate again too, you know, like that I think that there's a lot of things that Nolan does really well in the film, and I think that his like basic premise is an interesting idea, even if it's one that's a bit redundant for his work. I did notice by, you know, like the second hour of the film, deep into the second hour of the film, that this movie is basically just built up of spare parts of every one of Nolan's movies. Like there is a little bit of Memento with the memory stuff in here. There is a little bit of Following in here. There is a lot of Batman stuff in here. It's The Dark Knight and Batman Begins. And I mean, what is Batman Begins besides like a wayward kind of Odysseus character returning home to a land he doesn't recognize anymore and having to write it and all that kind of stuff. And you know, there's Inception here. There's Interstellar in here. There's certainly Tenet and Oppenheimer. Like everywhere I looked, I saw a little bit of all of his work in ways that were interesting and also quite frustrating. But the thing, I think the movie's biggest sin, if I just have to say it bigly and broadly here, is one that I already brought up, which is that it's just it operates on rails the entire movie. It feels very mechanistic. It feels very telegraphed from the beginning to get us to the end where the thing locks into place and all the gears turn just right. And we see, oh, this is what it's doing. This is what the movie's about. And
Mm-hmm.
I long for a slightly messier Nolan. You know, Tenet is for a lot of people, and I know maybe this is your issue with it too. Tenet's one of the ones that is the most sort of like mechanistic in its underpinnings and gets people like really flustered and frustrated because they can't quite make sense of the logic of the inversion and the time frame and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about it is that like the rest of the movie, and really like it's a movie that is just like 2.5 hours of constant exposition and explanatory shit around like what should be happening, what's going on, and why. But what I love about the movie is that if you just zone a lot of that stuff out and just watch, especially in the inverted scenes, especially in the climax of the film, everything you need to know and understand about what's happening and when is communicated visually to you. There are visual cues, there are markers, there are things in the mise-en-scène that tell you exactly where you are and what's happening in that moment if you're paying attention to it. And I like that Nolan. I like that Nolan that's like, yeah, I'm going to like lean so far into my like watchmaker bullshit that it's, you know, almost irritating. It is very irritating. But on the same side of that, I'm also going to tell you from the beginning, like, don't worry, just let me play around with this a little bit, like understand the core function of it, and we're just going to have some fun together. And I like that along with some of his headier themes in that movie. So this movie fails for me on principally, first and foremost, the front of it. Just like it's just too tightly coiled to ever really feel as epic and grand and exciting as I want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a movie that takes place on the sea, you know what I mean? Like, where is the feeling of being adrift? Where is the feel? You know, like literally, it's like we can't go that way. There's nothing there. 5 seconds later, wow, he did it miraculously, amazing. We're just at an island. Tenet is great because it's one of the few films in the history of movies that says right to the audience, don't pay attention, just feel it,
just vibe with me, just
don't try to
that I know what
it.
I'm doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for taking your time. My goodness gracious, plugging your microphone back in to join me to talk about this movie. Aaron, where can people find you and your show online?
Yeah, I mean, Hit Factory still exists on the internet. You can stream it, all the episodes that we've done over the past 5-6 years now on wherever it is that you stream your podcasts. The Patreon's still there too. We're not updating it, but it does have our entire back catalog of all of our paywalled episodes. And I'm still monitoring it to give you all an invite to the Hit Factory Discord as well, which is a community that's still popping off. People are in there talking movies. We have a music league that gets very competitive and we have a lot of fun with, that we're in like the 6th iteration of now. We're often sharing some extremely legal movie files for stuff that's sometimes hard to find, or things that find their way out into the ether, just, you know, for posterity and film preservation purposes. And then we're on Twitter at Hit Factory Pod. You can follow the show there.
Awesome. Very good. And hey, as I said earlier, you owe it to yourself, folks. Okay, look, you don't need to go and find some of these movies. They will find you. The billboards, the commercials, the Slurpee cups, okay? These movies are spending a lot of money to make their way into your consciousness. However, this is not the only path that you need to take. That's right, folks. You can take the reins of your own film journey. You can venture out into the unknown. And Hit Factory Pod, it's a great place to start. You're in the hands of trusted guides who will show you a better way. How was that? Was that good?
That was beautiful. Wonderful. As good as I could ever ask for. Thank you.
And he did ask, by the way, folks, before we started recording, he was like, Seth, please, we need new, good marketable material. And I was like, I got you, dude.
I Venmo'd you $20 and said, make it really sing, please.
Yes, that's right. And that's how you can tell Aaron and I's age, by the way, is because we use Venmo and not Cash App. Anyway, Aaron, thank you again. I really appreciate your time and all of your insight. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Seth. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate being here. Thank you for letting me shake some of the dust off and get back in the saddle here. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Look, no one else could string that bow but you, all right?
That's true. And here I am.
Yep. All right. Hey, and thank you very much for listening, folks. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.